Picture this. You're sitting at your kitchen table, laptop open, staring at your retirement account balance. You refresh the page. The number doesn't change, but your stomach still drops a little. 'Cause somewhere in the back of your mind, a question keeps circling like a fly. You can't swat away. Am I actually doing okay? Or am I just telling myself I am? You've seen the headlines. The ones that say the average American has almost nothing saved. The ones that say most people will never retire the way they imagined. So you start comparing your coworker's new car, your neighbor's early retirement party, your brother-in-law who doesn't even worry about this stuff, and you wonder if you're behind, or ahead, or just invisible in the middle somewhere. Here's the strange part. Most people who are actually doing great with their retirement savings have no idea they're doing great. And most people who feel confident are dangerously behind. I wanted to know the real difference. Not the guessing, not the Instagram version. The actual science that separate the top 10% of retirement savers from everyone else. And here's what I eventually figured out. Quick thing before we go further. I'm not a financial advisor. I don't manage money for a living. For years, I was the guy who opened his 401k statement, felt a wave of anxiety, and closed the tab without reading a single number. I thought top 10% meant Wall Street bonuses and inherited money, private jets, people who never had to think about a grocery bill. Turns out, that's not what the data says at all. The real top 10% of retirement savers in America are teachers, nurses, doctors, electricians, people with regular paychecks who made a handful of quiet decisions over a long period of time. So I started digging through the research. The Federal Reserve, Fidelity, the Employee Benefit Research Institute, trying to find the actual science, not the myths. What I found surprised me. So let's walk through it together, like two friends figuring this out over coffee, not a lecture. No spreadsheets you need to build, no jargon you need to memorize, just 5 honest signs, a little math, and 2 people you're about to feel like you already know. Let me introduce you to 2 people. We'll call them Denise and Mark, both 54 years old. Both live in Ohio. Both work steady middle-class jobs. Denise as a nurse, Mark as a high school teacher. Similar salaries, around $68,000 a year for most of their careers. On paper, their lives look almost identical, but their retirement accounts do not. Denise's balance today would put her in the top 10% of retirement savers nationwide. Mark's would not. Same income, same decades, wildly different outcomes. Here's the thing. This isn't a story about luck or about Denise being smarter than Mark. It's a story about a current. Think of your retirement savings like a river. Some people spend their whole working life swimming against the current, fighting it, fighting the market, fighting their own fear, exhausting themselves and going nowhere. And some people learn, early or late, to stop fighting the water and just let it carry them. Denise learned that. Mark never quite did. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly which one you are, and more importantly, which one you can still become. Sign number 1. Your balance crosses a specific real number. Here's a fact that surprises almost everyone. According to Federal Reserve data, households with roughly $463,000 or more sitting in dedicated retirement accounts, 401ks, EBRIs, and similar plans, rank in the top 10% of retirement savers in the entire country. Not $1 million, not $2 million, 463,000. Let that sink in. For comparison, the median household with retirement savings has only about $87,000 put away. And nearly half of American households have no dedicated retirement account at all. So if your number is closer to $463,000 than to $87,000, you are not doing fine. You are ahead of the vast majority of the country. This is the part where Denise starts to separate from Mark. Not because she earned more, because of what she did with what she earned, starting decades earlier than she realized mattered. That's your first sign. The number alone doesn't tell the whole story. There are behaviors underneath that number, and that's where it gets interesting. Sign number 2. You never stop feeding the river. Mark gets something that felt completely reasonable in the moment. During 2 different market downturns, he pulled his 401k contributions back to almost nothing. I'll restart when things calm down, he told himself. Denise never did that. Even during the scary years, 28, 2020, 2022, she kept contributing. Sometimes it hurt to watch her balance shrink while she was still putting money in. She did it anyway. Top 10% savers share this exact trait. Fidelity's own retirement data shows that during recent periods of market turbulence, the overwhelming majority of consistent, long-term savers who kept contributing and stayed invested ended up meaningfully ahead of savers pulled back or stopped, even though it felt safer to stop. Top 10% savers share this exact trait. Feeding the river during a drought is the opposite of instinct. It's also the whole game. Sign number 3. You're saving around 15% of your income, not 5%. This one is less about willpower and more about math. The current national average retirement savings rate, combining what employees put in and what employers match, sits around 14%. That number has been climbing for years, and most financial firms consider 15% a real target for a comfortable retirement. If you're only saving 3% or 5%, you're not behind because you're careless. You're behind because the target most people quietly assume is enough is actually about a third of what top savers are doing. Denise automated her contributions at 15% early on and never touched the setting again. Mark saved whatever was left over most months, which some years was 8% and some years was nothing. Read that again. The difference between whatever is left over and 15%. Automatically, no matter what is the difference between the middle and the top. Sign number 4. You're not putting all your eggs in one tax basket. This is the one most people never think about until it's too late. Top savers typically hold a mix of traditional 401k or IRA money, tax later, and Roth money, which is taxed now but grows completely tax-free. Why does this matter? Because when you retire, having both means you can control your tax bill. You can pull from the Roth bucket in high-income years and the traditional bucket in lower-income years, instead of being forced into one tax rate for the rest of your life. Denise split her contributions between a traditional 401k and a Roth IRA starting in her 40s. Mark put everything into his traditional 401k and never opened a Roth at all. Not out of a bad decision, just because nobody ever explained why it mattered. Sign number 5. Social Security is your backup plan, not your whole plan. Top 10% savers treat Social Security as a flaw, not a foundation. They know the average monthly Social Security benefit today is a little over $2,000, meaningful, but nowhere near enough on its own to fund a full retirement, especially once Medicare premiums and healthcare costs are factored in. Mark, if we're honest, has been quietly counting on Social Security to fill the gaps. Denise built her plan assuming Social Security might shrink and treated it as a bonus on top of what she'd already built. That mindset shift alone changes everything about how urgently someone saves. It also changes how someone reacts to scary headlines about the Social Security Trust Fund. Denise reads them and shrugs. Her plan doesn't depend on the outcome. Mark reads them and feels his stomach tighten because on some level, he knows his plan does. That's the quiet difference between a backup plan and a rescue plan. One lets you sleep at night. The other keeps you checking the news. Let's actually watch the river move. Denise started contributing $400 a month at age 30 and increased it slightly every few years until she hit 15% of her income. Let's assume a 7% average annual return, which is a realistic long-term average for a diversified stock and bond portfolio. Age 30, contribution $400 a month, balance $0. Age 40, total contributed roughly $58,000. Account value approximately $69,000. Age 50, total contributed roughly $130,000. Account value approximately $210,000. Age 54, today, total contributed roughly $155,000. Account value approximately $310,000, growing toward that $463,000 top 10% mark within the next decade. Now, here's Mark. He started at age 38 instead of 30, contributed inconsistently, and paused twice during downturns for a year or more each time. Age 38, contribution starts around $250 a month, on and off, balance $0. Age 50. Total contributed roughly $60,000. Account value approximately $95,000. Age 54. Today. Total contributed roughly $72,000. Account value approximately $118,000. Think about that for a moment. Denise contributed about twice as much money over her lifetime, but her account is nearly 3 times larger than Mark's. That gap isn't mostly her contributions. It's the 8 extra years the river had to carry her and the years Mark spent standing still or swimming backward. This is the part nobody explains clearly enough. Time in the water matters more than almost anything else you do. Here's what nobody talks about. Being in the top 10% of retirement, savers has almost nothing to do with income. We assume the people who are ahead simply make more money, but high-income households that spend up to their income often end up with less saved than middle-income households who automated a modest, boring, unglamorous habit 20 years earlier. The uncomfortable truth is this. Most people who are behind aren't behind because life was unfair. They're behind because nobody ever sat them down and showed them the actual number. $463,000, not a million. All the actual behavior, automatic and consistent, not emotional and reactive. You were never supposed to beat the market. You were just supposed to stop getting out of the water. Think about Mark for a second. He's not lazy. He's not reckless. He's a high school teacher who spent 30 years shaping other people's kids. He just never got the 15-minute conversation that would have told him what the number actually was, or why pausing his contributions during a downturn was quietly the most expensive decision of his financial life. That's not a personal failure. That's an information gap. And information gaps are the one thing you can close starting today, at any age, with $0 required. So, if you're watching this and your number looks a lot more like Mark's than Denise's, here's the real question. But how do you actually survive this phase? The phase where you realize you might be behind? I think the honest answer is this. You stop measuring yourself against the headline and start measuring yourself against your own river. First, resist the urge to panic adjust everything overnight. Big emotional swings, moving all your money to cash, chasing a hot stock, stopping contributions out of fear, are exactly what keeps people in the swimming against the current category. Small, boring, consistent changes beat dramatic ones almost every time. Second, increase your savings rate in a way you'll barely notice. Even bumping your contribution by 1% every time you get a raise can move you from the middle toward the top over a decade without ever feeling like a sacrifice. Third, give yourself permission to not be Denise by 60. You can still be someone's Denise by 70. The river doesn't care what age you got in. It only cares that you got in. You are not behind forever. You're behind today. Those are different things. There's a fourth thing worth naming, even though it's less practical and more emotional. Stop comparing your chapter 20 to someone else's chapter 35. Denise didn't get to $310,000 overnight, and she definitely didn't get there by watching other people's balances. She got there by looking at her own river, year after year, and asking one boring question. Did I feed it this month? That's the whole secret. It was never more complicated than that. If you're in your 30s or early 40s, your action step is simple. Automate 15% now, even if it hurts a little. Your mindset shift is this. Time is your biggest advantage, and it's the one thing that never comes back once it's spent. If you're in your 50s, your action step is to open that second tax bucket you've been putting off. Start splitting new contributions between traditional and Roth. Your mindset shift is this. You still have 10 to 15 good years of current left to swim in. That's not nothing. That's enough to change your outcome significantly. If you're in your 60s or a late starter, your action step is to get brutally honest about your real number and build a plan around Social Security as a floor, not a rescue. Your mindset shift is this. The goal was never to catch up to Denise. The goal is to build the most secure version of your own retirement, starting exactly where you are. At the end of all this, here's what stays with me. Top 10% isn't a club for people who were smarter, luckier, or born into money. It's mostly just people who stopped fighting the current a little earlier than everyone else, or who finally stopped fighting it today, even later than they wanted to. You don't have to outswim anyone. You just have to stop swimming against yourself. The river's still moving. It'll carry whatever you put into it, starting the moment you stop resisting. If this helped you see your own numbers a little more clearly, you might like the next video. where we break down exactly how to split your contributions between a Roth and traditional account, step by step. No job. Take care of yourself and take care of your river.